Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my presentation. My name is Stanley. I'm the founder and CEO of Anicca Digital. I've been in the business now for 20 years, and Anicca's 15 years old this year. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to present an integrated strategy for both social and search across a number of different channels. So a little bit of introduction. My speciality is search and paid media, and I've been a Google geek for a very long time. And our stand is over there. Katie's managed the stand. We've all an expo in Leicester on the 7th of June, which is just £30. So if you're local, you're welcome to join that. We basically there's just under 30 of us based in Leicester, and we've got about 45 clients. So we've got a mix of quite big national brands and some smaller clients as well. And our philosophy is really to do a lot of the more technical end of digital marketing. So stuff that integrates into the back end, a lot of technical stuff like that. And I'm going to show you a bit of that in a second. So let's just flick through to what I'm going to talk about. So first of all, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an explanation for some of the people that are new to this, what the different marketing channels are. And then I'm going to go through the ways that we can integrate them and get them to work together. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is how you can use the information that you gain and the knowledge you gain in one channel and use it in another. So for example, what you're doing in PPC, how that can help your SEO and vice versa. And then we're going to do a little bit about creative and content. Now, of course, content can be used across multiple channels, but the trouble is sometimes it's not very consistent. So I'm going to give you some ideas about that. A lot of the other things I'm going to talk about is audiences and remarketing. A big chunk of the presentation is about those strategies, which of course you can do across nearly all of the ad platforms. And so first of all, I'm going to look at the different stages of the sales funnel and how you get in front of different audiences at different stages. Then I'm going to look at some of the targeting methods, particularly around remarketing strategies. Then I'm going to talk about custom audiences. Now, custom audiences is audiences that you create yourself. So that's usually from your own data. So that might be where you've uploaded a database or the people that have been to your website. And then some specific strategies around remarketing for e-commerce, because some things work in e-commerce that don't work in lead generation. And then a little bit about cross-channel remarketing. That's basically you get traffic to your website from one source, possibly Facebook because it's nice and cheap, and then you remarket to them maybe in Google Ads when they're actively searching. So it's those sorts of things we're going to talk about today. Okay, so first of all, a very, very simple diagram just to explain that as a brand, we want to send our messages and our content to your target audience. And a part of that is that we're going to use certain media channels to achieve that. Now, we use the acronym POET, which stands for Paid, Owned, Earned, and Technical. So paid is really obvious. It's all the paid channels that you can use. So Google Ads, Facebook Ads, Instagram. Then you've got affiliate marketing. You've got Amazon. All of those different channels. Then you've got the owned channels. And the owned channels tend to be everything that you can control yourself. So this tends to be the content, the SEO, your social profile. So that's what we call the owned channels. And a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about is how we can use search and social, both paid and owned. The E stands for earned. Now, a lot of that is about traditional PR, but also any social stuff that you do. So the communities, the sharing, reviews, etc. And the bit that we're geeky at, and really is the sort of bridge between digital marketing and the actual technology, the developers, is the T of technical. And for us, that is really, really important, because if you can't collect information, you can't track anything, you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So I don't know whether any of you know, but it's really important that you do. But Google Analytics, which is probably the most popular analytics tool, they're retiring it next year due to GDPR issues and replacing it with something called GA4, Google Analytics 4, on the 23rd of July. Now, if you haven't already set up GA4, you need to do it in the next couple of months, because you're basically going to have overlapping data for a year. But a lot of your reports that you're running, like Data Studio and other free report tools and other paid tools, if you'll link those to analytics, there suddenly you won't have the data anymore. So it's going to be really important to download all your Google Analytics data and actually find a way of backing that up and then creating reports that use the new data and the old data. And it works really differently. So, and in fact, it's not particularly nice to use at the moment because they're still working on it. The other thing that we do with digital marketing is we use a lot of tracking codes or pixels. So if you think about the sorts of things that we're doing with creating audiences, so for example, if we all went onto John Lewis's website today and we looked at, I'm looking at Gone Furniture at the moment, and then as soon as I leave John Lewis, you can bet you're going to see ads everywhere. You're going to see them in Facebook. You're going to see them when you go to Gumtree or the Guardian newspaper. Everywhere there's going to be John Lewis ads. And that's because they're effectively remarketing to you or stalking you around the internet. Now that technique is very powerful, and I'm going to show you how to do it even at a sort of a next level up of sophistication. In addition to the tracking and the analytics, we've got to get product feeds out of an e-commerce website, and we need to optimize those. And also we need to visualize the data we get. So we use Data Studio mainly for that. And we're also looking into various machine learning and AI tools to try and make that process more efficient. So for example, if you've got lots and lots of clients, and maybe you are selling, I don't know, mobile phones, and your contract's about to come to an end, then you want those customers to be reminded. So if you can get that data out of your CRM system, and then you want to be able to upload it and create a Facebook remarketing audience, and then remind them that they need to renew their contract with you rather than one of your competitors. So that's the sort of stuff that we work on. Okay, so what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to look at the way that you can use data from one channel and use it in another. And what I'm going to cover to start with, there's really three main points in this section. Excuse me, I'm going to just take a sip of water. First of all, I'm going to see so for Google Ads, you get a lot of data. So I'm going to use the data from Google Ads, and I'm going to use it to help me work on my SEO. I'm then going to use SEO and optimize my content, but also optimize my product feed. And that can help me with my shopping ads and a type of campaign called a dynamic search ad. So a dynamic search ad is almost like paid SEO. It relies on the content of your website to determine when you get found and when you don't. So if you can optimize your website, and you're going to get a better job at doing the DSAs. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that all this great data you're getting from the ads you're running, particularly around key phrases that convert into sales, you can also use those in Amazon ads and Pinterest ads as well. So that's the three topics in this particular section. So first of all, just so you're clear, nearly all campaigns within Google search rely on key phrases to trigger them to show. But what Google is doing, and all the platforms are doing, is they're trying to make it so easy for people to use that you don't have to choose key phrases and you don't have to create ads. They're going to a sort of a polarization of so much automation that really literally my 8-year-old granddaughter could set up versus something that's so complicated that you need an agency with a lot of experience to do all the tracking of the audiences, etc. And because of that, there's now quite a lot of different campaign types where you don't actually have to choose key phrases at all. So the shopping ads have been around a while, but there's different types. There's manual and there's smart. And then there's also these DSAs, which basically, if you were selling, aluminium garden furniture, then you point the Google to say, all the pages in this category, I want to be found for that. And it literally looks at the content of the page. Now, the advantage of using a lot of these campaign types is you get the key phrase data. And of course, every day, about 15% of the people search with new terms that have never been heard of before. So that means that even if you set the most granular campaign, you're going to miss stuff. So what this allows you to do is use that data, and then you can create other campaigns. But the most useful thing you can do is you can also use that for your SEO. Now, search engine optimization, what we tend to do is we look for key phrases that have got enough search volume, but also aren't so competitive that you've got no hope in hell of being found for them. So if you're selling rattan furniture and you're a startup and you've got John Lewis selling it, you've got no chance of being found because Google's not going to trust your site. But what you can do is, that's great. So you can choose those key phrases based on the likelihood of being found and also the volume. But you've got no idea whether they're actually going to work. So the advantage of using the PPC data, first of all, PPC goes live immediately, so you can start making money. And secondly, you can find the ones that convert and then use those for your SEO strategy. So you don't have to wait 6 months to actually get found before you find out that you backed the wrong course. Okay. So that's basically how that works, and it's really, really effective strategy, and it can save you a lot of money because you could be doing a lot of SEO on key phrases which are never going to make you any money. Now, the other thing that we do in Google Ads is we spend a lot of time doing ad testing, and what that allows us to do is we can play around with trying to get a high click-through rate, which is the proportion of people that click on our ad, because we know that that's going to give us a high quality score, so we get better positions and pay less. That's basically the holy grail of Google Ads, is to get a high quality score in most cases. But the other thing you do when you optimize your ads is you're looking for things that drive a high conversion rate. So if you can find something that gets lots of clicks and also drives high conversion rate, that ad content could make very, very good titles and descriptions for your SEO. And it's much easier to play around with that. And as long as you've got the key phrase in the title and description, which works for PPC as well as SEO, you can test your SEO titles and description again without having to change the content and risk losing your rankings. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can test landing pages. So particularly if you're a brand new site, what you need to do is see if your website works. And we find that with new websites, the first 3 to 6 months, they don't work very well because nobody recognizes their brand. And what we find is as you start to spend more and more money on shopping ads, people start to see the brand and they start to recognize it. And as you're chucking traffic to the site, you can fix all the problems on the site. So that's really important. But if you think about it, something that makes a good landing page is something that converts, it's fast, it's relevant. And that works for PPC and SEO as well. So if you can optimize it for those factors, that's going to really help in both sides of the equation. So if you can improve your pages through SEO, or in the case of if you're doing e-commerce marketing, you've probably got a product feed which feeds into your merchant center, and you can actually augment it and make that product feed better. What happens is that not only does that get you better quality SEO on the page, but also if you look at something like a shopping ad, it's really reliant on seeing the content in the title and description to get you shown at all. A DSA ad's the same. It's looking at the content on the page. So if you can optimize the page rather than the feed, what's going to happen is you're going to get a better SEO and a better PPC. Now, the only caveat to that is sometimes you want slightly different data. So sometimes you have to add extra data into the feed, or you might not be able to change it at the website. But if you can do both, then that is going to give you a much better situation for both of them. And this is why I put this, this sentence in pink, that as we become more automated, as Google becomes more automated in PPC, these two disciplines are starting to merge. So we've already merged our paid social and our paid search team, but now we've had to merge our SEO and our content team. So we now work in something called pods. So for us as an agency, half of our clients are in pod 1 and half of them in pod 2. And then as we bring in more clients, we're at pod 3. But within there, you've got a cross-channel team that can work together and use the information from one team to guide the other. And it's quite unusual. Usually most companies don't do that. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can take that key phrase data with the conversions and you can utilize it for Amazon ads and for Pinterest. Amazon ads have got 2 types of ads, a manual and an automatic. And it's the manual one that allows you to bring in the key phrases and actually use the data. But again, it's guessing. Let's find out what works in one channel and use it in another. The other thing is a lot of these channels, particularly things like Facebook catalog ads, both Pinterest and Amazon, they often rely on product feeds. So if you can improve the product feed, either the quality of the feed itself or right back at the root of the website, then everything else is going to benefit as well. Okay, so I've just skipped a slide accidentally. So what I'm going to talk about now is consistency and effectiveness of content. I won't go through all of the things on the index file because I'll just dive straight in because I'm conscious that I do tend to overrun a little bit when I'm doing these talks. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the concept of shattering content. Now, really what this means is you should write one piece of content which is really good quality and then find lots of ways of reusing it. So instead of trying to write, 10 blogs a week or one blog a week, write a really good quality buying guide, write something that people are going to find valuable, it's better than everything else out there, and then you can reuse it and repurpose it and distribute it across multiple channels. Now, the reason why this is very important is because lots of people spend a huge amount of time on posting on organic social. And the problem with that is a transient thing. In the same way that email is as well. If you don't actually link back to some content on your site, it's lost forever. So what you're actually better be doing is have more of a site-centric approach. So the content is on your site, and then you distribute it through a whole range of channels. So the sorts of things I'm talking about is social media, PR, email marketing. And you can see that there's lots of, I won't go through all of them individually, there's lots of ways of reshaping that content. So the A10 framework which I've given you, we printed 2,000 of those and have given 2,000 away. We've had about 4,000 downloads. I've spoken about it. We had a workshop which we went around the country. We did Facebook, Instagram ads, which worked amazing, about £4 a download. LinkedIn ads, which were, I won't mention how much they cost to download because it was incredibly expensive. And actually, and then what we did was we take the people that sign up and then we get them to sign up for our webinar program. We run a webinar every Friday, so they see our webinars. So it's a sort of a whole ecosystem around one piece of content. Now, if you could do that once a quarter, it's much better to have a really intensive piece of work around one piece of content and then find lots of ways of distributing it, rather than doing lots of little low quality pieces of content. And this is what I mean by an integrated strategy. So what it does is takes advantage of all the different things. Now, a lot of the people that have been visiting me today, what I've been doing, if they're interested in SEO, the first thing I do is I look at their domain authority. And domain authority is really the chances you have got of competing with your competitors in the SEO rankings. And a lot of people have got, we use a tool called Ahrefs, and a lot of people have got 10s, 20s, 30s, and really they've got very little chance of being able to compete, particularly if they're a new site. So what you've got to do then is think about, well, if I do some PR, I get that publicity, but then I can also get a link from my PR, and it will go, and that will help my SEO. And in the same way, if I create content which is great for SEO on my website, I can then use social media to distribute it. So this is what we mean by integrated strategy. Now, we've been running for 15 years. It's our 15th birthday. And up until this year, or at the beginning of last year, we would sort of get the creative from agents, from our clients, or outsource a little bit. But we never had our own in-house team. And we brought that in last year. Because as we do more social and display advertising, and we want to work with bigger brands, we wanted to improve the creative. Because at the end of the day, you need consistency across every single one of those touch points. Now, you can see how much it's changed in a year. So that was our old site with our drama awards that we won. And then you've got our site on the right. And our theme is about space. Why? Well, because we're very techy, but Leicester is the centre of space research in the UK. We've got the National Space Centre, which is the massive, great big, it's a day out for the kids, and we do their marketing. But we also got this Space Park, which is a technology centre part of the university. So space is our theme. And you can see that this actually rotates, so you can easily see what we do. We've got our clients on there, and then we've got a little bit about us, and it obviously goes down. But that's not the end of it, because everywhere you go, you see this space theme coming out, and it's really bold, and it stands out in social media. And probably people find it a bit overpowering. They've seen it a lot now, but it's creative, it's a bit informal, it's fun. So all I wanted to do, I wanted to completely contrast that with the most boring example in the world. and that is bathroom sinks. Okay, so this is a live example of a real product, and it's sold by quite a few people. Now, just a caveat here, if you're doing something like Amazon ads or shopping ads, you often have to have a white background. But if you've got that and you're doing social media, you really don't want to see this in social media feed. You just go straight past it. So let's jazz it up a little bit. So first of all, it turns out that quite a few people sell this product, but really none of them really grabs my attention. So I'm going to use Screwfix as an example. We actually added the logos, by the way. They didn't have any logos on them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a bit of border around it. I'm going to add a bit of it. You can tell our creative director, tap dance. It's really cool, isn't it? This isn't a live ad, by the way. In fact, if anybody from Screwfix is here, and if you compare that with the original, you can see the difference. So if you're going through social media, you definitely notice the one on the right. Now, I've got quite a few client ones, but I couldn't really share them with you today, and they look a little bit more interesting. But how can you make a boring sink, into something that sparkles a little bit more? Okay, so when we're looking at creative, we need to think a bit bigger. We need to be consistent, but we've got to inspire people. We've got to do something that actually makes people think. We've got a bit of a guideline, so these are some of the things that you need to think about when you're creating social content. And if you go onto our Anicca.co.uk website, on the webinar page, we've done loads of webinars on this. And Tom, who's our creative strategist, he is an amazing, funny speaker, and he'll entertain you for an hour. We also think about audience first, and this is really important because this is the old sort of concept of segmentation of your target audience. But it's really important to have different content and personalization for each of those different audiences. So if you understand what the personas are of your target audiences, you need to match the content to that. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to quickly talk to you about was how to reach different prospects and customers at all of the different stages that they will interact with you. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about, because I know in this particular audience, is we do have quite a lot of people that have got both a retail and an online e-commerce presence. So I'm sure many of you have seen things like the Boston Matrix. You can't be a marketeer without creating at least one matrix in your life. So this is one of mine, one of many, to be honest. So what I've done is I've put consideration or research at the top, online and offline, and then the actual conversion happening online and offline along the side. So if you think about the traditional way we used to do business, we used to walk to the shops, we used to go around the shops and we would buy it, might come back next week and buy it. And that would be the same as sort of sales process. Now, at the opposite end of the spectrum, we've got a completely online model, which is basically e-commerce and SaaS. And then we've got these hybrid ones in between. So showrooming, which I'm sure all of you have done, is when you go online, you go and do your research in the store. So, for example, you're looking for a new sofa, and you go into DFS and all the other ones, and then you go online and find exactly the same model for £200 cheaper. And then the opposite is when you do all your research online, but you want to go and test it. So you might have found some nice ones on, and then you go to Sofology or DFS and you sit on it. It's really uncomfortable, so you don't buy it. So these are sort of 4 different ways of looking at the interaction of customers at different stages. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard of the sales funnel or the customer journey, the classic awareness, interest, consideration, and conversion. And interestingly, all the ad platforms now provide campaigns based on this model. As a marketeer, I often talk about acquisition as well, because I want to get people to my site. So you sometimes see sort of traffic campaigns. But in most cases, you can create content and marketing to match all those different states. And so what that means is not only have you got people interacting with you online and offline, you've got them at different stages of the funnel. They're probably using different channels. So you might be seeing you in paid social at the beginning, then they sign up for an email. And then a week later, they do a search, and then they find you, and then click on your site and then buy from you. So what we've done is try to integrate this into this multi-phased approach. And the reason we can do this is because of the ability to create audiences based on people's behavior. And I'm going to go into the detail of that in a minute. But effectively what you do is, at the beginning of the process, at the awareness stage, you're probably going to use things like social, YouTube display, maybe digital TV, to get a lots of awareness. And what you're trying to do there is trying to get people to interact with your ad or view your ad. And what they'll probably do is they might watch a video, and then you can, anybody that watched the video, you can then market to them again. But ideally what you want to do is get them back to your website, either to a product page or a content page. And you might be doing SEO and PR to help that. And the thing is once they've got to your website, then you've got them. You can track them. You can pixel them. And this is how John Lewis does it. I went to look at the garden furniture, and then suddenly Facebook are marketing to me. So that's why it works, because once you've got them over to your site, then you can market across platform. But once you've got to that point and you've created that warm audience, then you can hit them with the second stage, and that's when you hit them with a conversion ad or an offer, or you use something like dynamic remarketing, which is where I went and looked at a product, I didn't buy it, and that product then, that's an actual product that is in the ads. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work through some of that in a little bit more detail, but I just wanted to show you this slide from analytics, and this is in the multi-path section in the conversion bit. And this is to illustrate how complex these paths can be. And usually what I do is on the left, you've got the channels, and then on the right, in the middle, I've got the source and the medium. Now, I normally add key phrase in that as well, but because I didn't want to show the clients, I've actually hidden that for now. And then I've also hidden the revenue, which would be on the right-hand side. But you can see there's so many different touch points. And the problem is that Facebook and analytics and Google Ads, they attribute the sale very, very differently. So what Facebook will claim, you can't even see in analytics sometimes, because often what they're doing is somebody's viewed that ad, and basically Facebook says, hey, yeah, I've had a sale. But actually, they might have come back 2 or 3 steps later, and analytics says it's Google Ads or SEO or direct. So there's a big difference between the way that they, and if you add them all together, you get 3 times more conversions than you actually have. So that's why it's a big issue. So just going on to the next section then, which is remarketing strategies. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about how they work, because this audience is very mixed. So I apologise to the technical people amongst you that probably know this stuff. So just starting on remarketing as a principle, this is about where you get people to your website, and basically it doesn't matter how they got there. It could be through, an advert on the tube. And then once they come to your website, you tag them with some tracking code, they leave, and then depending on what ad platform you set up, Facebook, you go onto a site, and then suddenly you'll be stalked around the internet with display adverts. But it's much, much more sophisticated than that now. Different elements. First of all, you have to have that same tracking code on the website, but you also have to mark up the page so that the ad platforms know you've been to a specific product. And we usually use a tool called Google Tag Manager to do that, using something called a data layer. You don't need to know what it is now, but that's the terminology that people will talk to you about. But you've also got to have a catalog, because they've got to be able to match it. And that catalog or product feed, it's like a big Excel database of all the products and the descriptions. Will take the image, and then if somebody goes onto your site and you create a remarketing strategy for the people that have been onto that section of the site but they didn't buy from you, so you exclude the people that buyed, then they will actually see an ad with that product in it. So it's the next step up. Now this works really well in Facebook, call it Facebook catalog ads, but Google's been doing it for a long time. You can set up dynamic remarketing. But what they've done is they've introduced it into their new smart ads, smart shopping ads, and also the new performance max ads, which are brand new ads, which will eventually take over smart ads. So they're designed to get you in as many places as possible, including the remarketing strategy. Now, the other thing that you can do with remarketing is, I think I've said everything there actually, I just said, also Bing's got it as well. So Bing shopping is quite good, particularly if you've got a B2B audience, because that's powerful. Another type of thing you can do if you create an audience is you can create something called a lookalike audience or similar audience in Google. And this is where you basically look for people that are your ideal customers and you want the platform to find more of the same. So you've got a couple of ways of doing that. You can, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, but you can upload your database of all your customers, or you can use the fact that they've been to your thank you page at the end of the shopping cart, and then you can create lookalike audiences based on that. It's a really good way of amplifying and finding more people, and that's a very effective way of doing it. One of the other techniques, and this is one of my favourites, is the fact that you can create a campaign using particularly video ads, because video ads are really, really cheap. We're talking 1 to 2 pence for a video view, for consumers, 10 pence, and in LinkedIn up to 50 pence for B2B. And what you do is you create a video ad, and then everybody that's watched 75 or 95% of the video, you then create a new audience, and then from then you market to them again. Now that's really important for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is over £5 a click. So if you're trying to market in LinkedIn, what you want to do is narrow it down to a small, really engaged audience. Now this happens within the platform. So it's Facebook video ads followed by a conversion ad, LinkedIn video ad followed by, say, a lead generation ad where they fill the form in LinkedIn. But you can link YouTube and Google together. So that's really powerful, because obviously YouTube's got loads of reach. And then you can then use something called remarketing for search ads, or RLSAs. So they've seen your video. They've seen your video, they're in an audience, and then when they search for your product, you can then bid higher for them, or you might just bid on those, okay? So very powerful techniques, we use it a lot. I tried to do it in this diagram. So you can do 2-step campaigns within a channel, but if you can get them over to the website, you can do what we call cross-channel. So this is to sort of try and explain it. So my blue are my target audience, but when I start off with, so what happens is it frozen again? It's been a bit slow, I'm sorry. Okay, right, that's the first step. So the first step is have some form of engagement, or preferably a video campaign. And then they watch that, and then you can then create an audience of the people that watch the video. Or you get something over and you get them over to your website. So this could be a guide or something that they download, and then they go to your website. Once you've got that second audience, what happens then is you then hit them with I think we've got a slow internet connection. Okay. Can you see it? And so you end up with and that's really important, because sometimes those clicks are too expensive. So what you're trying to do is just work with a smaller size audience. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to create a new audience. This is called custom audiences. And basically there's various different ways. And one of the advantages of importing your own data, called first-party data, into the ad platforms is that the platforms can use it for various different reasons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of slides on this. So first of all, each of the search engines have slightly different naming conventions. And then what happens is we can use various different techniques. I have mentioned them already. So the first thing to do is to upload your database using a CSV file, and you have to encrypt it. And actually, if you're a really big company, you can use various integration technologies to do that. And we've actually developed some stuff on that side. Now, this is brilliant if you're doing a retention strategy. So if you say, again, the mobile phones, if you know that your contract's about to end, you can load them all up. But also you can sell new products, because if you've already got customers, you can sell to them again. It's really good for previous visitors to the website, and you can do it at the page level. And then also, if they've interacted with you. So I've already given you the example. If they've watched a video, or they've engaged with some organic social posts, etc. And then you can also create the lookalike audiences as well. So this is just a lookup table to show you the numbers. I'm going to skip that now, but that's for reference later. And then I wanted to just talk a little bit about enhanced conversions. Now, most of you are aware that cookies are going. We already know that there's loads of issues with Apple and changing their, if you've got an iPhone, you have to sort of opt in again. And it's caused all sorts of tracking issues. So what Google wants us to do, and the platforms want us to do, is actually supplement their data with first-party data of what your customers really are. And what they do is they use a timestamp of when somebody converted, and they match it with their data. It's all encrypted again. And in that way, it helps with the way that they monitor conversions. But with Google ads particularly, a lot of the bidding strategies are around things like revenue or return on ad spends based on the conversions you've already had. So if you've got better quality data, it optimizes in a better way. Now, it does require either Google Tag Manager, a G-Tag or G84, which we've already mentioned, and it does take a little while to collect the data. So it's actually just a tick box in the back of Google Ads in the conversion section, but you've got to get everything else set up to make it work. And that's just a diagram of how it works, which you can refer back to later. So there are some remarketing strategies that are just really, really useful for e-commerce. So I'm just going to quickly have a look at that. So one of the things that you can do is you can create remarketing audiences within the current analytics. And that means you can build audiences, say, for example, of all the people that have come from Pinterest. And you can use the URL. It could be a specific campaign. And when we use tracking URLs, that allows us to do that. You can use audiences on top of your existing campaign. So that could be a shopping campaign or a text campaign or even a display campaign. And it's in two modes. You've got an observation mode where you put it on top. And then if you find that there's a certain, say all those Pinterest ones convert really, really well, and it's on garden furniture. So they come from the garden furniture stuff that you're doing over at Pinterest, and you get a really high conversion rate, or then you can bid higher. The other thing you can do is, for example, if you did a load of marketing over in Facebook to try and narrow down the audience, and you only want to get people that are interested in high value garden furniture, you could just show the ads to them, and that's called targeting. So one's sort of across the board and one's just narrow. Now what you do with that is you effectively run these audiences, and then you review them, and then you decide whether you want to make any changes. And then if you want, you can create a similar audience to the ones that work to get even more, okay? And in Google, they're called customer match, which is where you upload your list. So these are some of the audiences that are really useful. So you've got your converters, you've got your non-converters, you've got new and returning users. You've got people that have been to specific pages. You've got people that spend loads of money. You've got people that have, been back to the site loads of times. People that go on lots of pages. So all these are the different things that you can do to create audiences based on. What you can also do is create audience based on what we call events and views of content. So this is the specific things on the page that they view. They might have watched a video, downloaded a brochure, how much they added it to the cart, but they didn't finish. So these are the sorts of things that you can do as where you start off in one channel, so say paid social, or it could be SEO if you've got lots of content coming, got lots of visitors going to a specific page, might be a blog, and then you finish them off in a second channel. So the concept of honeypots is where you deliberately attract them to your site. So my garden furniture is really expensive, 3,000 set. So I don't want to sell it to anybody. I don't want to compete with, Homebase or B&Q selling a £25 chair. I can't afford to bid on that. So what I want to do is I want to find those discerning people over in Facebook using interest targeting, bring them to my site, and then everybody that comes over, and you need a reasonable number to get enough audience, I'll then do Google Ads. So that's how it works. So quite a lot of strategies there. So this is the concept of honeypots. So usually we use the cheap sources of traffic, which is things like Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. But as I said, it could be a radio ad. It could be you've done a load of local advertising and they go to, offer /radio to, where are we? We're Galaxy or something in Birmingham. I can't remember the local station. And then what happens is that you build that list based on that behavior, and then you then get them again. And this is where you do the really specific stuff like LinkedIn and like Google Ads. So we can do that with specifically for e-commerce. So video views is really good with YouTube. Also, this idea of doing RLSAs, remarketing for search with shopping. You can create those vanity pages, but things like cart abandonment as well. And then Facebook custom audiences, because there's lots less restrictions. So one of the things you can do, and this could be for B2B audience as well, get people to your site and then use Facebook to remarket to them when they're off duty. So for example, if you're doing B2B, it's really expensive to get traffic to B2B. And then what you can do is remarket to them when they're over in Facebook, so it's a lot cheaper. So that's my talk from the point of the integration of e-commerce strategies. I can answer questions, but we'll probably run out of time. I just wanted to give you some freebies. So first of all, we've got our conference on the 7th of June in Leicester. The early bird tickets are only £30. We've got some amazing people speaking. If you want to go to the website, you can see all about it. This is our 8th conference. Also, we've got a digital boot camp. So interestingly, in East Midlands, there's grants of 60 to 100% for this particular, it's a 12-day course leading to a qualification. So if any of you are interested in that, we've got, if you're outside of the area, we can do a really good discounted rate for that. And there's a little bit more detail. It's 12 days. There's a 3-week course, summer school for students and people that are not working at the moment. And then the other one's 1 day a week. And then we can also help you with GA4. So if any of you suddenly panicked and realised you need some help with GA4 because you haven't got it, again, that's something we can help you with. And then finally, every Friday, meet again tomorrow. This is a talk I'm doing tomorrow, which is about the fact that e-commerce has dropped 50% in a year for most people. We basically teach you how to benchmark how you're doing compared with the rest of the sector, which is going to be really important for lots of people. And I think that's the last slide. Oh, you can also have free access to some of our training material at academy.anicca.co.uk. If anybody wants to talk to us, we're over here. Thank you very much, everybody. We will put the video actually on our website in the webinar section, and I think we'll be sending it out by email next week when we get your email addresses. But thank you very much.